You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host as always. Today we are talking about air conditioning, the technology there, where it's going, what it costs, what it means to people these days, and how high-tech it's starting to become. Zoning, iPads on the walls, those sort of things. We've got one man to talk to. He's our expert in that whole region. We've spoken to him before. It's Brad Stinson from Stinson Air and Solar. Brad, thanks for coming back in.
You're welcome, Trent.
Mate, back in the day, we had the wall unit. You still see a few of those around on the old cottage lots. Then we moved to evaporative units. My grandma's still got one. Got to keep the back door open. And it seems we've got this mix of split systems and ducted reverse cycle systems that are essentially the same, similar technology, I would have thought. That's where we're at as a precipice, and we're just adding cool little smart functions to it.
Yeah, that's a good
summary. Is that a good history of it? Can you give us a bit more depth to my very basic knowledge?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of the box units that you talk about, the window unit, or some people would call them window rattlers. They were around a lot. We used to have one in my parents' study, which me and my sisters would sleep in on a really hot night.
With the streamers coming off.
The only aircon in the house.
Yep.
And that was sort of normal back then, that there wasn't a lot of air conditioning in houses. But it's, prices have come down, technology's improved, and now it's become a real standard. So yeah, we've moved to the split systems, and obviously evaporative air conditioning has been around a long while as well, and the ducted reverse cycle has been around a long time as well, but it was always very expensive and only sort of for the elite and top end homes. But now
it seems a norm now.
It's
you can still get evaporative, you can still get a wall unit, but how often are you installing those?
Yeah, never wall units. Evaporative, very few. Some people like it, but they do struggle when it's really hot or it's really humid. And a couple of days like we've had recently, we certainly get those complaints, and we certainly pull a lot of them out and swap them to ducted reverse cycle. Wow. So it's become sort of the norm. Wall splits are still very popular because there's some places you just can't fit the ducted system. So a lot of apartments and townhouses and the like, we're still using a lot of wall splits. But in new homes, 4x2s or large homes of any size, ducted reverse cycle has become the standard.
Well, especially with your split systems, if you're in an apartment, it's sort of the way it works, right? I don't see many apartment buildings running ducted reverse cycle through the whole facility.
More and more, but often it's down to space. Might not have the space above the ceilings and underneath the concrete slab to fit the ducting in. But we are seeing more and more of the mini ducted systems going into them, but still more on the premium apartments. But a lot of the cheap apartments would still just stick with the wall splits.
Wouldn't it be also with regards to maintenance a lot easier to have? And probably not for the environment, but a lot easier to have 150 split systems that can individually be maintained rather than these big zonal consolidated systems that may just put out a whole sector of the building at once because one little area is out.
In commercial office blocks, there's often the central plan option, but in apartments, you really have to have individual units because people need individual energy monitoring and the like. So, and for servicing, it is pretty simple that if unit 112 goes down, well, only unit 112 goes down, and we go and fix that.
And the maintenance costs are a lot cheaper as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, pretty cheap to run. We always recommend a seasonal maintenance, but that's very cheap. And, running costs, these systems are so much more efficient than they used to be in years gone by.
Obviously, it depends on the amount of outlets as well and the wattage. Can we get an idea what we're paying these days for a ducted reverse cycle system for a brand new house?
Good question, but obviously, houses of all shapes and sizes, but we're probably $7,000 to $12,000, good range. And on some really big homes, that can hit triple figures.
Well, when you go 2 stories or 3 stories, it becomes much more complex.
Yeah,
you've got these
can easily be talking $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, and depends. It's always case by case. You always want to speak to a client in custom design and see what their needs are. A lot of it's his needs, and a lot of it's aesthetics as well. How do you want it to look? If you want it to look nice, often unfortunately you've got to pay for that.
Talking about paying for it, there's a few brands out there. You see Mark Taylor's Fujitsu on the TV in the past. You've obviously got Daikin. There's Panasonic. There's Samsung, as I understand it. There's a couple of others. There's a couple of Australian brands that I've heard of as well recently. Do you have a pick of the bunch and ones that you'd stay away from in regards to your history?
I think it's like anything. You get what you pay for, and we've always been very strong with Daikin as our premium product, and they, recognised around the world as the world leaders.
What sets them apart?
They only specialise in air conditioning, so they're not trying to make everything. They've got a bigger product range than any of their competitors. So as well as being, say, the premium brand recognised in Australia, they also often have biggest market share, which if you compared it to the automotive industry, you never see a Mercedes or someone having the premium recognition, but also the biggest market share. It doesn't happen. But because they can have such a wide range of products to suit any application, they're used on a lot of projects with the residential and commercial. So they've got a lot of that space covered. We love the Panasonic as well. Fantastic product. And also for a more level entry, but without leaving all the sort of, some of the cheap and nasty no-name stuff behind it, we also recommend the Samsung gear as well.
Okay. How long are we expecting a ducted reverse cycle air conditioning system from a Daikin or a Panasonic to last?
Yeah, good question. You've always got your 5-year warranty installed. Everything's covered.
Geez, I hope it lasts longer than that.
Exactly. And occasionally, you get someone with a malfunction 6 or 7 years in, and it's never a nice thing if someone has to go and spend $1,000 on a repair. It does happen, but it is the minority. But most, you would really like to think you're going to get 12, 15, and there's many cases of people getting more than that. But once you get to longer than that, you've also got to weigh up, like a lot of people out there now, do I want to keep that system when it may be a new system, might be 40 or 50% more energy efficient than that old one, so I'm going to get my money back by putting in a new system.
If I'm retrofitting or upgrading my VAP system into a reverse ducted, or even an older reverse ducted into a new reverse ducted, am I having to pull out the whole system, or can we leave all of the ducts and the ducting and the vents and just replace the wall unit or the motor out the back or the panel on the wall? Is it the whole thing?
Good question. We get asked this question a lot, and it's not the nicest answer to receive because...
Oh, don't tell me, Brad.
Unfortunately, you've got to pull it all out and start again, and with pulling it all out, you generally need a sight bin to waste it, and then you should even patch the ceilings where the vents are and put them in new locations. So,
why?
Unfortunately, it ended up costing more. So why? The good question again, with patching the vents, and why we can't use the duct is the duct in evaporative is all larger size ducts. It's used to high velocities of air, where we need to use smaller diameter ducts for reverse cycle. So we have to replace all the ducting, and it's laid in a different configuration with zoning and that for reverse cycle systems. So that all has to come out. Then with outlets, in an evaporative system in a typical house, you'll see the outlet just above the doorway. And that's designed so that you can crack the window open and the air will pass through the bedroom and out the window. Whereas in reverse cycle, we're going to have that outlet above the window, and we're going to have the window shut, and it's going to take the heat load off the window, and the air is going to pass back through the bedroom and into the passageway, where generally the return air grill will be in the passage. So the air is travelling a different direction. Now, we would have a mix of people that would say, well, can we get away? I don't really want to patch the ceilings and paint the ceilings. It's already going to cost enough as it is. So we certainly do jobs where we'll put the outlets in those locations and basically point the vents all towards the window. It's not perfect, but it does the job. So we always give the clients all the facts and let them decide. It will work, especially in smaller bedrooms. The air's going to flow to the other side of the room and then draw back through the room. So, but yeah, good question.
Jeez, that's disappointing. You look at it from lay person's point of view, and it'd be, I guess you've had a few hard conversations in that space to convince people that you're not trying to rip them off.
Yeah, I think, you just give people all the facts, and, we pride ourselves on a lot of integrity, so we generally have people believing what we say. We've been around a long time, so, but it's just, it's one of those things. It is what it is. To do it properly, you do it this way. We're still happy to do it the other way. We always say we can't use the ducting. We've got to pull all that out. And sometimes then the roof has got to be patched, and like I said, we need bins. So instead of it being a $7,000 system, it might be an $8,000 system because of the pull-out costs as well. So
let's talk about technology in this space. It used to go to the panel, press on, and it was on. And then you might have a timer, and then you'd turn it off. These days, you've literally got an iPad sitting there a lot of the time, don't you? What can you do with this, and how can we see in the future our air conditioner, or even today, talking to our Google Hub about automation?
Yeah, so this is where we've seen the most advances. And to be honest, WA has led the world on ducted control systems. There's a couple of companies behind it. We are very strongly aligned with Advantage Air and their My Place, My Air systems. Fantastic technology. Like you say, going back, it was just turn it on, set the temperature, fan, set the mode, and that was about it. Then zone systems came into play, but they were basic zone systems. So you might have, firstly, they were like, the old systems were day-night. You either had the bedrooms running or the living areas. And if you wanted half and half, well, bad luck. Then we went to more zones. So we'd put 4 or 5 zones in a house and maybe pair a couple of rooms together. But still those zones were either on or off, 100% on, or 0%. So then with this new technology, like the My Air through the My Place suite of products, started to do variable air control. So now we can crack the zones open, maybe 5, 10%, 20, 50, whatever we want. So if it's maybe kids' activity and they're in the bedrooms, we might have those at 100% or 90%, whatever they preference are. But then the activity that they're walking through, maybe we set it at 50 because we want a bit of air there, but we don't really need to waste it because we still want to get some air through to the living, dining, kitchen area. So we've got a lot more control over our comfort. In bedrooms, again, as an example, different children might, one likes it colder, one likes it warmer. So you can control the temperature in different rooms by controlling this airflow through the zone motors. So it's become really popular. Second from that is that this control of the zones makes the systems more energy efficient. So this is a really big factor as well for me. So
that's money.
It's money, exactly. So for an example, again, I'll use the bedrooms again. So we've got bedrooms 2, 3 and 4. We might have always run, say, a 250 mil diameter duct to those rooms because 200 mil is too small, 300 mil is too big. But those 3 bedrooms, maybe one's 12 square metres, one's 14 and one's 15. So 2 of those bedrooms in the past were always getting too much air. And so now people just by use will feel, they go, a little bit cold in here. So they'll back that bedroom A off to, maybe 90%, and the second bedroom back off to 85%, and maybe the other bedroom they leave at 100% because it's down the end of the run and it needs a bit more air. And now there's less air going to those rooms. There's more air going to go to, say, the other. If the living room's on and family's out in the living room, there's more air now going to that space. And that room's going to get to temperature quicker. So now that's going to tell the thermostat I can turn off sooner than I would have if I wasn't getting that extra amount of air. And so that's how this technology, first is that comfort and then the energy efficiency. And then from there, for me, is the wow features that come with this products, these types of products. So it isn't an iPad, but it looks like an iPad on the wall and it can be used like an iPad. It is a tablet and we can use it for anything. So they're becoming real home hubs in the home. So in not too distant past, people were asking us to hide their air conditioning controllers in the hallway, often even in a pantry or a linen cupboard. They didn't want to see them. Now it's front and center. We want it in the kitchen. People want to maybe download a recipe and read it while they're cooking. They want to, run their Sonos through this, through this controller. Any other app-controlled device in the home, they're now putting on these devices. And I know, you've even spoken with Intelligent Home in the past, and their typical home there, putting a lot of their apps. Maybe it's the Alarm.com or others on our tablet that we're installing. So it's becoming a real home hub. And another great wow feature is the app control itself. So people are loving the fact that they're at work and on a hot summer's day, 40 degrees at work, leave work, turn the air conditioner on. By the time they get home, it's on. Or another great example would be typical WA family gone down south for the weekend, get to about Mandurah, got a car full of kids on the back seat, and when you get home, you got to unpack. Well, get to about Mandurah and turn that air conditioner on. At least you'll come home to a cool, comfortable home when you get home. So they're the big changes, and like I said, for me, it's brought extra comfort, it's brought extra energy efficiency, and it's brought these extra wow features.
Optionality, really, isn't it? I mean, back in the day when you had the timer, you had to be prepared.
Yeah,
and if you were prepared and you were over-prepared and you decide, we'll go out for dinner tonight, well, then you're wasting all this there on a house that's not even used.
Exactly.
Now the ability to turn on and off as you need, that's got to help with both just functionality, but also, as you said, cost.
Yeah, and now it's linking to the lights, the garage doors, all sorts of other products, which can be now for a really affordable price, especially through this My Place gear. People can put it in. People are putting it, the first 2 jobs we did, one was a first home buyer's house, a little 3x2 villa, and the second one was a luxury home built in Mosman Park. So this technology is affordable and great functionality for everyone.
Can we tell Siri to turn the aircon on yet?
We can through Google, and I believe Alexa is on its way, or maybe can do it already.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
These other assistants are obviously a little bit ahead. But yeah, the question is, that's fantastic. Voice control is already here. Fantastic. Brad, that's a very concise but also very informative update, I think, on where we're at with air conditioning and how that's really leading the way as a hub for the rest of our technology in our house.
To go back to the start, we talked about how it's come down in price. Another just quick example is a typical, we do some work for some big builders around town, and a typical builder in that first home buyers market, only 5 years ago, 5% of those homes would have had ducted reverse cycle. Now those same builders are putting in 75, 80% of their homes. First home buyers expect it now. It's become the norm. It's affordable, but it's also, people are used to it. So that's sort of a big part of the future.
I don't think as an investor or even as a homeowner with any level of credence towards the value of their house, there was ever a good decision now to not install ducted air conditioning. Yeah. Unless you've got a very small villa where you might still be putting in split systems. To not have air conditioning in your home is a huge killer.
Yeah,
in both a rental space and a sale space.
Yeah, no, correct. Across the board, it's nearly 100% of new builds, which is a lot of what we do, as well as established homes. But it's nearly 100%, of people are putting it in because it is an expectation these days.
Bonus question. Obviously, it's helpful to just get it all done with the builder. Is there a cost saving to go straight direct to your air conditioning specialists like Stinson Air Installer to get it done as a part of the house and land package, but not directly through the builder? Can you work in and save that $1,000 on builder margin?
Not really. We love people that are building with other builders to come to us, but the honest advice is you're going to get your best deal through the builders. Obviously, what WA's been through in the past few years with all sorts of incentives, the days of builders putting big margins on air conditioning have gone, and
they get volume discounts as well, don't they?
They get discounts that we can't, that we get also passed on to us that we can't share with consumers because we may have to show a builder's purchase order to get that price, for example. So you are going to get the best deal generally through your builder, not always, but most times. And anything that's multi-story, you need to do it during the build process.
Just too much stuffing around.
Yeah, some builders, especially the smaller ones, will let you take it out of contract and use someone like us through the build process. But if it is multi-level, then you really need to ensure that it's done during the build process.
It seems like a lot of things with the build these days, where it may not have been in the past, it seems like it pretty much just makes sense to build it into that product, given the integration with the build schedule and also the volume discounts you can get. Even if you're paying a bit of margin on top, you're probably saving that back with the volume discount. Saving all that back and then not having the disruption to your house. Maybe less things like exposed conduits, because if it's getting put in after the event, whether it's single story or two story, may not be able to get controllers where you want them on walls that don't have cavities. Having trades work over timber floors and the like, and over having to drop sheet over furniture. People don't like their ceilings getting cut open and dust, that fine layer of dust, and you can drop sheet all you like, but you're still going to get sort of fine dust throughout the house. So it really makes, with the price and for all those reasons, it makes sense just to do it during the build. Brad Stinson, thank you very much for coming and chatting air today. I really appreciate it. Let's have a chat in the future about where all this technology is moving again.
You're welcome. Anytime. Thanks, Trent.
Okay, Suburb Spotlight time now. We are talking about the inner west suburb. Very notable suburb, beautiful suburb, quite new for its location, really. Churchlands. Lots of history here. Pretty cool place to talk about in terms of history. A lot of people would be scratching their heads as to why it's called Churchlands, and we've got the answer today. We've got number one agents today. For the first time, we have a team in. A team has taken out and is the number one agent by value sold in Churchlands. It's Michael Hallam and Carl Casilli. Boys, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trent, for having us.
All right, guys, let's run straight into some history. I want to know, before you were born, before I was born, before our grandparents were born, what was this place? What did it mean to Perth, and how has that evolved up until 2020?
There's two aspects to Churchlands. Originally, it was owned by the Catholic Church. So in the 1800s, it was bought from a Perth family. The whole suburb was bought by the Catholic Church, and then in time parts of it sold off. So for the most part, Churchlands gets its name from the fact that it was owned by the Catholic Church at some stage. Most recently, we've had a subdevelopment within Churchlands itself, which is commonly referred to as Churchlands Green, which used to be the old Edith Cowan University site.
What were they doing there?
So that site had moved to Joondalup, where now Edith Cowan Joondalup is, and it's a subdevelopment where we see 250 to 300 homes in there, stereotypically on anything from 350 square metre blocks up to 500 square metres.
Is that fairly new estate where pretty much every house is a beautiful two-storey home?
Yeah, it is. A lot of them are two-storey homes because that build plot ratio, you get 90-10 in there. So in order to get the square living space meterage in there, most homes have had to go 2 stories because stereotypically we're on that 350 to 370 square metre block.
It's not just the relatively new mansions that we've got in Churchlands. You've got the Greens estate. What else is there, though?
You've got several different pockets of Churchlands. So what we say, there's a hyper-local markets within Churchlands itself. So you've got Churchlands Private Estate, you've got Abbey Brook Estate, you've got what we call Old Churchlands, and you've got Floreat Waters. So they all are typical 800 to 900 square metre blocks, built anywhere from the the early 80s up until the mid-90s. So you do have a range of different properties within the area.
If you could take your pick, which estate would you boys be in? Might be a personal choice.
Personally, I like contemporary, I like modern, I like lock and leave, so I would certainly be Churchlands Green.
I think I'd be on the other side of Pearson, where I'd get views of Herdsman's Lake. It's almost the benefit of having two worlds. You get ocean views or lake views, if you like, and you get to live in almost inner city Perth by having those beautiful Herdsman Lake views.
Bigger square meterage as well?
They are. So like Michael said, you're that stereotypically 800 to 900 square metre blocks down that end, probably a little bit more family orientated. Yes, they've got the older homes, but those homes have got great scope to be renovated, and a lot of blocks down there are subdividable as well, which is cool.
We can talk about that later. Let's talk about who's actually, you just referenced it then, who's living in Churchlands, and I'm guessing the answer is because of these different estates and what they offer, there's an array of different people.
Yeah, look, we definitely see majority of our buyers will be families. Churchlands is surrounded by, without a doubt, some of the best public and private schools. You've got Churchlands Primary, Churchlands Senior High School, Newman College and Hale. So we certainly see a big influx of families coming through.
I guess with the price point, it makes sense. There's not many first-time buyers that could afford to get in, right?
Yeah, look, it's certainly, we don't really see first-home buyers coming throughout Churchlands. It's certainly an aspirational suburb. It tends to be the buyer's second or third purchase.
Okay. Those people that are selling, are they the same people that are buying? Is it just a recycling of people with young families staying in until their kids have gotten through high school and then moving on?
Well, it depends which area. So like Michael said before, it's broken up into 5 different areas. Let's talk about quickly those people who are buying in. Stereotypically, those people who are buying into Churchlands Green are our downsizers. So those that are selling in the larger blocks in City Beach and Floreat who want a lock and leave downsize are moving into Churchlands Green. And then we've got the younger families who want the larger living space who are buying into the older areas. Now, those who are selling in the older areas, we've got predominantly an elderly population who are selling to downsize. And then in Churchlands Green, if we've got those younger families who had bought in there when their children were younger and had sent them to the primary school, they've probably grown out of those homes now. So they're looking to take the next step into Floreat and City Beach, into those larger blocks.
Okay, that makes sense. Socioeconomic space is probably fairly similar, but the demographics do evolve as you go throughout the estates, and people have different preferences.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Do you see a lot of people try and stay within the suburb?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We certainly see a good mixture. And what I've seen particularly over the last couple of years, there's been several different estates built up in and around the Churchlands area, but the Churchlands Green estate has been really well maintained and really well developed. And what we've seen is that the older generation who have been living in the old pockets of Churchlands for the last 10, 15 years, they're so accustomed to the area that they are also now making that move into Churchlands Green. They don't want to leave the area. They love it, but they just don't want those big blocks to maintain anymore. So we see, it's funny, we see a hop from the young families who have outgrown Churchlands Green to the other pockets of Churchlands, and vice versa. We see the older demographic, the empty nesters where all the kids have moved out. They're now selling the big blocks and making the move up into Churchlands Green. Okay.
Now, the last couple of months, we can noticeably see that across many of the more premium suburbs in Perth, there's definitely been a swing of buyer-seller dynamic, really. It's really tightened up across most agents that come here. They're saying the same thing. But given that Churchlands is a suburb that has a very strong push and also level of insulation because of Churchlands Senior High School, do you see over Christmas, January, a strange little peak in interest trying to get in before the school season starts?
Yeah, without doubt, and you've hit the nail on the head. Especially round about that November, December, January, we see a lot of people trying to buy to get their children in and established before the school year starts in February. So if they can buy in, at least have the home under contract, then they can make an application to the high school and have their children accepted. Over the last 3 years, we've been selling anywhere from 5 to 7 homes during that Christmas period. So let's talk about this Christmas period alone. That 2-week period between the end of December and the 1st of January, we sold 7 in that area. And they were all people who wanted to get in to have their children get into the high school.
Okay. Just demonstrates that not only is there a benefit for sellers to be aware of that time frame, whereas otherwise it might have been, let's leave it till we get back in January, February, but also on a more macro level, it's a reason why Churchlands hasn't really suffered that much over the last 5 years in terms of prices when you compare it to surrounding suburbs further east. It's got a contingent of people that will always be pushing to move in.
Yeah, it's been lucky in that instance. And look, without a doubt, the market has been a roller coaster. It's been up and down over these last 5-year period. But because of the desirability of these schools, and look, particularly Churchlands Primary, it's probably the most sought out public school within WA.
Why?
Well, Why? It's just so highly in demand. We actually see quite a few international people wanting to actually send their children to those schools, and they're saying, hey boys, we need to purchase within Churchlands to get our children to there. Funny is that Churchlands Primary, not even the entire catchment of Churchlands itself, is within that catchment. So it's an interesting dynamic that primary school is just so highly sought after.
All right, let's move on to some price points. If I want to get my kids into school in Churchlands, or I just want to get in the suburb, how cheap can I get it done?
If we're looking at Waterway Court
yeah.
And the likes, where you're looking at 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, which aren't really conducive to families, because it kind of bucks the trend. Why would you buy a 2-bedroom apartment if you want to move in for the schools? Having said that, you can get in. So there's $400,000 apartments that'll get you into Churchlands.
Are they new enough?
Well, they're not. They're generally built in the 80s.
Okay.
They're those older 80 constructions. Then you move into Churchlands Green. We've got apartments in there, which we've sold recently, $920, $930, and they're 3-bedroom apartments. It starts getting more expensive
Very
when you
quickly.
get into the Green.
Yeah.
It does. But if you want that quintessential home and you're a family, into Churchlands Green, round about that $1 million price mark will get you in, but they're far and few between.
Okay.
But you could probably pick up something in the 900s, 800s older that would need a fair bit of work in the older suburbs of Churchlands.
Yeah. Look, and as we go back to that hyper-local market, that old pocket of Churchlands, depending where it is and, as Carl mentioned, how livable that home is, you can pick something up for a little bit over $1 million on 800 squares. Saying that, you're going to have to spend some money on it. Generally, your average price point in the older pockets of Churchlands that you can move into, live, but you can add scope down the track, you're looking at about 1.25 to 1.3.
So that's your quintessential home.
Yeah, that's your average quintessential family home on 800 squares, 4 bedrooms, 2-3 bathrooms with a nice pool.
Okay, how expensive can it get? What's the coolest, most sexiest, expensive property you've seen in Churchlands?
Well, the most expensive one we sold, which was for $3.7 million, and that was I guess the only way to describe it was like a grand manor home. It actually sat over 6 independent lots. So can I say it's completely left of field for what the average Churchlands property is. It had 9 bedrooms, I think 7 bathrooms, a tennis court, a swimming pool, 5 separate living areas, and parking for up to 7 cars. So a completely different property. On the flip side, if you look into Churchlands Green, where you've got these amazing, contemporary, stunning, beautiful homes, they sell anywhere up into $2.5 million.
Well, it just shows that even if you were going in there to spruce the place up, you couldn't really overcapitalise.
No, not really.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about subdivision. You've pointed out, surprisingly enough to a lot of people, that there might be some opportunities, especially in the older estates there. I'm guessing a lot of that's just turning 1 into 2.
Yeah, correct, absolutely.
You're seeing a bit of it?
Yeah, look, we generally sell probably anywhere from 2 to 5 properties that can subdivide per year.
That's not a lot.
No, it's not a lot, but there still certainly is opportunity out there. There's no R30, so it is all R20, so it is simply just cut down the middle. Some, depending on where it's located, are simply battle axe properties. But look, generally 3 to 5 per year is what will come to market.
Is anyone making any money off of these, or is it more just trying to buy into a location and then deleverage?
I don't think there's big profit margins from buying subdividable blocks in Churchlands. I guess it depends where they are. We've just sold one on Empire Ave in Churchlands. Now, it is subdividable, but a lot of the times, just because something is, doesn't mean that there's any worth in doing it.
Just because you could doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, exactly right. And we say that quite a few times, if the numbers don't make sense, you're just buying something that you could. So it's not a bad idea to land bank. If the family wanted to subdivide, mum and dad buy something for the children down the road and divide it and give one child each.
Yeah.
So really, that's
I
where
see
the
a lot
work
of
is.
that, right? I see through a lot of the premium suburbs, north and south of the river, in the last 6 months especially, there's been a push in development block prices, or at least demand for development blocks, because the people that are in the know believe that the market's moving. And even before they see any data on whether it be profitable in the first place, they're just looking to acquire land.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing.
Well, look, there's one thing that they'll never make more of, and that's land.
That's
You know,
right.
we'll always make homes. Homes are, for the most part, a depreciating asset, where land is an appreciating asset, and they will just never create any more land. They just can't. So people will always be attracted to subdividable blocks in the hope that one day you can and make some decent money on the back of it.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Carl. All right, let's talk about median house price. Hit me with it, boys.
1.275
Okay.
for the suburb of Churchlands.
So if you have $1.275 million in your pocket, and I'll get two answers today. I hope they're different because it's personal. It's a personal answer.
Yep.
What would you boys be doing with $1.275 million cash in your pocket in Churchlands?
That's a tough one. If I was to buy a home to live in, I would take that to Churchlands Green. If I was looking to possibly add some scope or do a flip, I'll be looking at the old pocket of Churchlands.
Okay, give me some. Just be very specific. What is the old pocket of Churchlands?
Okay, I would be looking down Lakeside Road, Thornbill Way, Halcyon Way. It's what we call the old pocket of Churchlands. It's across the road from Churchlands Green, as Carl alluded to before. It's got beautiful views across the lake. It's got amazing views to the city. The orientation of some of these homes have got amazing views straight to the city with north-facing backyards. So from an orientation point of view, you could not ask for better. At that price point of 1.275, you can certainly pick something up really nice, live in, but you could certainly add value down the track.
Okay.
I would buy an Abbey Brook estate, which is Churchlands, which runs between Churchlands High School and Newman.
Explain the lifestyle there.
Yep, so beautiful leafy suburb. There's only 2 streets into it. There's only about 40, maybe 50 homes in that small little... It's a small little enclave, very private. There's no through roads. You don't drive through there to get somewhere else. The roads are brick paved. There's massive amber trees that line the road. And you've got scope to add value without overcapitalising. So I'd spend my 1.275 in there, probably spruce it up and look at maybe selling and getting out and buying something else. But the lifestyle is beautiful. There's a little brook that runs through the back. It's quiet, it's private, and 1.275, you'd almost have the pick through there as well.
Wow. That's a very good... Look, we've got the double the trouble today. I really appreciate you got two levels of perspective as well from what I can hopefully say is 2 slightly differing demographics too, so which is important. We've got the younger end of Churchlands and probably the median end of Churchlands. You should have a trio here sitting in the late 50s who can give us the back end of Churchlands as well.
I'm the younger end. I'm just saying that. Thanks, Trent. You're very good. Unlucky Mike.
Boys, thank you very much for coming in. And all I can ask is go and grab Woodlands or something like that. I'd love to have you in again for another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Trent.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!